and welcome to Dark Matters. I'm Carly Spell.
And I'm Johnny Standing.
Thanks so much for being with us today, Joey.
It is an absolute honor. Thank you so much for having me.
That's
I
all.
think you're about 6 hours behind, is that correct, in Missouri? You're based in Missouri, I believe.
Unfortunately, yeah, but I get to talk to you from all the way over here, so I'm happy about it now.
Yeah, no, it's an
Great.
absolute honor. I came across your work, well, more stumbled across it when I was deep diving Saturn Wor-Ship, which is maritime law terms, which I have
Right.
studied for some time. And it's an integral and inherent symbolic theme within the fake fictional legal system of the seven-headed beast of the United Nations, and of course, all roads leading to Rome, which is the Vatican, or the serpent
Yeah.
blood cult of Kronos or Father Time. So
Yeah.
Joey's YouTube channel, Library of the Untold, alongside his book, The Book of Wonderful Suffering, is a plethora of occult esoteric wisdom delivered in his own unique style. His his prefrontal cortex is as impressive, if not more so, as his bookshelves. And, and he's dusting off these covers, showcasing his laser-like synapses and bringing this alchemical gnosis of transmuting pain into spiritual growth to light for a whole new and rapidly growing audience. So thank you, Joey, so much again for being here with us. It's an absolute honor to have you today.
Well, first of all, let me say, can you type out that review you just said and send it to me so I can put it everywhere because that was awesome. But
Thank you.
yeah, I'm
I
glad
will.
you got the book, and I'm very proud of it. It's been a work in progress for you. Oh, if you can flip it over and show the back, my daughter did that
Yeah.
artwork. She's a college student,
Wow.
and you see how the rings are amazed? She took that out of a coloring book and then made a vertex of it, and then you see the archon hand reaching up or whatever. She's a
Yes.
brilliant artist, and she
Boom.
helped me with all that. And so it was kind of a team effort, but I suppose I'll tell you something kind of weird about the book is that it never was meant to be a book. My goal was I would always write down these kind of pillars of living type of pieces for my son to have, whether something happened to me or when he was old enough. It was just kind of like a journal up on my top shelf for my son to get, one day. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to print this up and I'm going to make it into an actual book, just have one. So it at least looks professional and stuff. So I sent it into a printing company where at the printing company, there was a guy working there. I forgot his name, but he emailed me. He was like, dude, call me, man. And he reminded me of like that guy from Twister that Seymour Hoffman played, the rad dude or whatever. And he was like, oh man, you took me for a left turn in chapter 13, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I didn't know people were reading it. I thought you were going to print it. And he's like, I know a guy at Barnes and Noble publishers who I would be interested in this. And I was like, well, send it off or I'll send it off. Sure. And he hooked it up. And then before I knew it, the book got published and I didn't mean for that to happen. So it meant to be for my son. And then now everyone has it, including you. And oh man, like what a crazy turn of events,
Yeah,
Wow,
yeah.
and
No,
you
that's
said
all.
you couldn't get it yourself.
I
Can't get a
can't
copy yourself.
I can't get a copy myself without paying $27. Unfortunately, so the book came out as $13, right? And then unbeknownst to me, Barnes and Noble, once my YouTube channel went viral, the book as well started becoming popular with it. And when it became popular without my consent, they raised the price gradually. Now
Wow.
it's more than double the price. And you know what? Fuck, I'll say it. I'll say it here on the air because I've been meaning to make a statement about it, but they're pocketing the money of the extra that's being paid. So now
Yeah.
I'm still getting royalties on that 13%.
Right.
And they're pocketing the more than double the profits. And
Wow.
so I've contacted a couple other publishers too, but I don't want to talk about anything that's depressing or whatnot. But it's unfortunate. And the thing is, the reason is because they're so big. It's a
Yeah.
huge company, and they just frankly don't. I'm not on their radar.
Right.
No, and I think this is the problem with the
Could
you
be.
know, this is what we perceive as what a society is in general. You know, these big corporate, corp means dead, orate speak, these dead fictional entities that, you know, they're in this illusion that we find ourselves, and it's not real. It's something that we make with our minds. I mean, I know that they're
Right.
there, but this is how they kind of screw us over. This is how they, you know, they
Yeah.
manage to kind of get away with what it is that they get away with, and that's just another fine example of it. You know, so
Right.
you know, it becomes this you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. Like,
Right. Yeah. And well, that brings us right back to the whole Saturn worship thing, because it's almost ironic, because my book rails against that very ideal system.
exactly.
And yeah, so the people who actually publish the book are doing the very things that my book is against. And that's just, I don't know if it
Yeah.
tickles me or if it makes me angry, maybe a little bit of both because of the irony to it. But it is very it's very interesting how the black cube and the Saturn symbolism is considered to be esoteric, which means, you know, veiled or secretive or arcane. But look out your window. You know, everything that we have are cubes. You know, the housing of primordial people, they would dig hives into the sides of caves or build teepees or so, but our houses, they're cubes. Our buildings, they're cubes. As a construction worker myself, it's aggravating. I love architecture. Ever since learning about the pyramids and cathedrals, I love architecture. And now, as a construction worker, I am devastated to see them knocking down cathedrals to put up parking garages that are made out of cube for our cube cars to drive to, so they can walk into the cube hospital and just keep Nana alive as long as possible, even though she's 93. She could be dying peacefully in a hospice in a cathedral with beautiful religious artwork all around her.
Yeah.
But instead, they're poking and prodding her, trying to keep her alive for 2 more days. And that fear, I think, stems from the whole Saturn symbolic ideals that we've come to, and I hesitate to say worship, in our society. And the reason I say hesitate is because you and I, the three of us, might have an understanding in our conscious minds that we don't worship the Saturn ideals, but I mean, we use money to live. We're speaking over phones right now, which are Cuban, like Cuban. They're Cuban shaped, just like the movie Space Odyssey illustrated. And so that's the problem, is that whether you like it or not, you are part of the cult of Saturn, and that's a problem.
Yeah.
And I think you know you touched on it there about the you know the arc. It's like the arc in Freemasonry. That's where we get architecture from. Archaeology, Ark of the Covenant, archons,
Right.
an archon, or you know, it means authority above. And this serpent satanic cult, as I was saying earlier, you know, obviously it's prevalent in the legal system. The judge wears the Saturnian robes. You know, that's what they're
Right.
literally called. And you know,
Right.
so and when we understand the language, which is they call it Babel or Babylon, the language of legalese, might look like
Right.
English, might write like English, but it certainly isn't. And when I go to decode all this, and we know that it's in the language, and language as a mathematical interface, and the English language as a construct again. Saturn is about boxing us all in, isn't it? It's you know, and we get into, you know, Jesus or the Christ figure, which I think is an archetype. I think it's a consciousness within us that we are to embody. We know that the kingdom is within, again, another arc that really, you know, that's what we need to kind of be embodying. And when we can kind of deconstruct that, all those Saturnian all that symbology, we've got to remove ourselves from it. It's kind of be of the world, not in it, and stop kind of having it as this authority above us, and understand that our own innate power is within us, isn't it?
Absolutely. And the cube is a perfect symbol of limitations. You know, the term think outside the box exists for a reason. It's because, I mean, we say it innately, accidentally, because we find ourselves in these boxes. And and you're blowing my mind with the arc thing, because I didn't realize how prevalent the word arc is in everything from archetype, archon to architecture. And yeah, it does remind me of that Masonic symbol where you have the cornerstone. Which I know the cornerstone literally is that first stone on the ground, but within that arc, that symbolic version of it, you've got that all-seeing eye, and then the duality that sprouts from it on either side there. And that's a fascinating thing. It's like our words are well, like they say, I've seen spelling, casting spells.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
And even the capstone of that, you know, on the all-seeing eye, where they cap it like that,
Capstone.
it comes from Capitus Maximus, which is that's what they decapitate the head of the living, and they use the all caps language, the all caps letters to denote the dead fictional entity, because they can't put living men and women into trust. They can't, so they have to turn us into property. And that's what this kind of Saturnian cult do. You know, they turn living men and women via the birth certificate, the birth bond, into property or chattel they can own. And it's, you know, the Capitus, that's why, you know, the lowercase I has a little dot on it, and that's why on your passport they only want a picture of your head, because it represents that you've had your head chopped off. That's why you get Capitol Hill. That's why you get all these references to caps and capitals, and the beat just keeps going on and on. But again,
is
like,
that why
you know,
my name? Right. Is that why my name is in all caps on every fucking bill I get in the mail and on my cards? I didn't know that.
Exactly.
So that makes me a different entity, so to speak, I guess. I'm not personal.
I think, Jill, isn't it?
Say that again, so Joe.
It's a straw man, isn't it, Jill?
It's called your straw man, because what they're doing is they're turning you from the living man into the dead fictional entity. In Black's law, the surname actually means no name, and obviously your first name, Joey, would be of the Christ, because it's your Christian name. However, your name is of the Christ, which is that embodiment of the Christ, and the Ian, Christian, is an anity, which means annuity, which is part of the Satanic Roman civil system, which is part of this Saturnian cult. So this is why you will get all caps bills, in, you know, your name in all caps. You're on a credit card, it'll be in all caps, and the beat goes on, because it's not actually you that they're enslaving. It's the piece of paper. Is this fictional, and you know, this fictional straw man creation that they've created off the back of us, because we've got these birth certificates, which are bonds, and the bond is traded on the stock market. You know, we become the stock to these elites, to these parasites, really, that have been operating for thousands and thousands of years. And the main key theme is time, and Saturn, of course, is father time, and Kronos. And they keep us trapped in time. And again, you know, as you know, I've watched your videos, Joey, as well, and it's, you know, the theme that we know in the legal terms. If we kind of embody the Christ consciousness, if we raise Lazarus from the dead, that's becoming aware of the dead fiction. If we walk upon the waters as the Christ did, walking upon the maritime sea, and if we overturn the tables of commerce in our Father's temple, and that's our temple, because Golgotha means skull, then we're moving ourselves from the system. And the Christ, obviously, as you know, Joey, on the cross represents matter, the man as matter, and that kind of transcendence of spirit from matter to, you know, some to the higher state of consciousness, is that ascendance. And it's all in the legal system. I always say the journey of the spirit is the journey of the law, and it's a real in-depth dive, and we could perhaps do some more on it another time, but I don't want to take up me talking. I want to hear you.
No, well, I'm learning as much as, I mean, I would like to get with you and maybe do an entire library of the Untold episode on language, and how our language is also a form of mind control. And what you just said a moment ago makes me kind of realize that if I'm not a personal person, that means I can be sold, so to speak. And that's a very disturbing idea when you come to think of it, because I know that our banks like to gamble with our money. And I know that, for example, my mortgage just got sold to a different company. I was with this company, and then I got a letter in the mail saying, we sold your mortgage to this company. It almost feels too personal, but like you're saying, if your name is in all caps and all of a sudden you're a corporate entity, now you can be sold. And if we know anything about history, that's just a seed compared to what they're trying to do, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll probably blow your mind with this one, but mortgage means mort is death, gage is pledge. So a mortgage is a death pledge. And what they do is, when, to keep it really simple for your viewers, but the signature is the sin or the sign of nature, and sin is the moon and sin is the sinner. So that's why on legal documents you will sin on the document by signing it. But the signature itself creates the credit. So actually, when you sign that loan agreement, it's actually in effect a promissory note. You create the credit, we gift it to them in our ignorance. They leave you with a debt on this side of the ledger that you then have to repay for the rest of your life. But the con is, you've already paid it. You already discharged that debt at source. So it's all, the whole banking system is an absolute fraud and con to enslave people to the nth degree. And also, like as you know, Joey, and I think that's another beautiful thing about you and your channel and how it comes across is, you keep it really real. You've come from a background in construction. The way that you express all this complex information, you get it over in a really slick way, and people really relate to it. And it's beautiful to watch the videos, and you let people in, and people really kind of click with you and resonate. And I think that's all we can do, just kind of keep exposing kind of the gravity of this system. And at Dark Matters, like we say know who you are, know thyself, that gnosis, but also remove that shackle of debt slavery. Because as you know, Joe, if you're working a full-time job and you've got kids, and how much time do you have to sit down? And I mean, you obviously haven't, so I don't know how you've done it, but because I don't have children and never my book.
Well,
yeah, like,
without,
got a passion for
you'd
it,
be
but it's
surprised
like, if
about.
you're not exposing it.
Right. Well, to expose it, you have to make time for it. But I encourage anybody to maybe stop scrolling Facebook for a while, and you'd be surprised how much time you have to question things, or to if you quit scrolling on Facebook, your mind starts expanding on its own. In fact, if you just sit down and have no stimulation for a period of time every day, your mind starts to force itself to expand. Like, I get the question all the time, where do you have the time to read all these books? And I simply say, well, where do you find the time to scroll on Facebook and watch YouTube videos? And nothing against YouTube, it's changing my life right now. And but there is a trade-off there. You can still have time with your family. My son's right there in the other room. I'm waiting for the moment for him to come get in on this. I know it's coming, but it is. I'm very grateful to have met you guys, and with you having the polar opposite type of lingual talents as I do, I think that would be something worth embracing in the future, because I know language has a particular type of influence on our reality. It almost seems like Terence McKenna said, like, our reality is made out of language. Like back in the day, people who didn't have a word for the color blue literally couldn't see it. And it reminds me that if with this understanding what lawyers speak and business talk and these black and white forms, and understanding that helps you see through the veil of the black cube. Because the way you described it just now, I'm not saying this literally, it means that lawyers and judges are conducting black magic.
Yeah.
Oh, they are. Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. And Black's Law, that's the book, that's the dictionary, and there's about 19 editions now. There may be more, but black in legalese means coloured, and coloured means counterfeit. So the Black's Law dictionary, and I've got one, they look like books of spells. They look like, I've got special editions of them, the black with all the worlds, and literally it's a completely different language. So it's a colored language, which is a counterfeit language, and it goes back to the bar mitzvah or the bar society, and the bar society is Babylon, and the bar were actually in a past life called the Gala, and the Gala were ancient Sumerian demons who would drag the dead into the underworld, and the bar are still known as the Gala, who collect the souls of the dead to store in the Vatican vaults. But obviously they're not collecting us, but they're collecting our soul. And when a baby's born, they actually take the soul of the baby's foot and put the imprint on the live birth, the live
It's
born
the soul
certificate, to represent that they've taken the soul. Yeah. And then
It's
honestly,
literally
it
the
gets
soul.
sicker, Joey, but it's a big dive. But the language is absolutely key, and language means, you know, in etymological terms, the monsters of war that protect the noble ones. And I love my etymology. And the legal system, as I say, you know, English is actually the direct in phonetical terms of Hebrew. And once you decode that, and once you get to the numerical values, because numbers and maths, as we know, is the true, you know, geometric state of the universe, and then the whole thing falls down. And that's as easy as it gets. And us all shining light on this is as key as anything else, you know, most definitely.
Right. And if you look at the, you know, the axiom that everyone knows of, as above, so below, it seems as if that language of business, so to speak, passes down to us and we are forced to use it accidentally, whether we like it or not. And what you're saying, one thing that always occurred to me on well, not just construction sites, but every workplace ever, what's the first thing you say to your coworkers is good morning.
Yeah.
And it wasn't long before I was like, morning. Yeah, that's kind of what this is. We are all mourning together.
Yeah.
And to say good morning is almost as if to say, I accept my fate as this, you know, as this persona.
Absolutely.
Right.
There's a lot of people, Joey, over here now. We're starting to get that together. Carly's been doing that a very, very, very long time, and she's right at the top of the game with it. You do really well to have a good private conversation with her, actually, because actually it really would interest you. I know it would, and there's something you could join together there with the esoteric knowledge, because actually, with the esoteric knowledge, the law itself is hidden from the rest of us. We are plebeians. That's what's on your passport. And Carly can explain all that to you. So yeah, all that good morning and all that. It's all part of it. In fact, isn't the English language almost like a Hebrew backwards of some description, Carly?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. It's the direct phonetic opposite. So basically, when we're speaking English language, and I have to say, when I've perhaps done some, you know, natural medicine like the mushrooms and the ayahuasca, I've actually heard it at its correct pitch. We're on the wrong frequency with, you know, it's to do with it should actually resonate on 144 frequency, you know. So a lot of people say, oh, I'm one of the 144,000 that's going to be saved. I'm like, it's a frequency, you pleb, you know. Everything is code, as you know, Joey, and symbols will be their downfall. You know, Manly P. Hall said, didn't he, you know, one of my favorite quotes, you know, a great veil will fall from the minds of men when we understand the symbols and codes. And that's kind of what I do, and just as you do, you know. And you know, I watched your video, with when you were going through your library, and you know, it's just absolutely off the charts. You know, I was just like, wow. But yeah, you know, you studied this, and some of, you know, your videos I've seen on YouTube, you know, they go through this in far more detail than I do. I take it from a different, you know, a certain slant, that's all, because that's how I've come at it. But as my nana used to say, we're all trying to get to the same place on a different buzz, you know. Once you kind of see it, you can't unsee it.
Right. Right. And that's what is necessary, is to hit it from two different angles, because there's many, many different kinds of people. You know, and the polarity between the two of us is going to, I think, reach a wide range of individuals according to their own needs, because there's not a one size fits all when it comes to the esoteric. Of course, there's a one size fits all when it comes to the exoteric, because you have, you know, church and school, which is indoctrination, as you guys, I'm sure, fully aware. Yeah. Same with church, and then it prepares you for the working world through a system of a prison system. You know, because you guys have seen the charts that compare the school to the prison system. They're exactly the same, but they're both meant. Prisons and schools are both meant for the same thing, to get you prepared for going into the slave world. And so it doesn't just stop at language, actually. You know, the bells and whistles that go off that say you are now free from this cube, from this classroom, and now you have this much time to get your ass over to the next cube so that you can be force fed the next bit of syntax error of information through language in order to continue stuffing you down further into that cube. That way, once we finally do release you and get rid of you, you can continue to go on and do the exact same shit that you've been doing here for the last, 18 years, or in a prison sentence, whatever that happens to be. And it's the same all over the place. And in a way, some people talk about this information or the occult or whatever it is being hidden. It's not. It's not hidden whatsoever. Just go to a gas station and stand in line and look at the lottery tickets or any it's literally right in front of us right now. You know, it's amazing how we ignore, how we've been programmed to ignore what is right directly in front of us in plain sight. You know, for example, the pyramids. Everyone's known about the pyramids for as long as thousands of years, right? And how incredible is it that for our entire childhood, we accepted the fact that these impossible structures were made by people due to superstition. And we just let that happen to us, despite somewhere inside we must have known better. And it took men like Randall Carlson and Robert Schoch and Graham Hancock to be able to step up and be like, wait a second, let's measure these things. There's a lot more going on here than we thought. They even told us that the pyramids were built by slaves. And it's an insult to our intelligence.
Yeah.
Because if you look at the way the pyramids are built, you realize that everybody on the job site must have been absolutely on board with the entire deal. And that is impossible to do with slaves.
Yeah.
So it's right there in front of us. And what else is right in front of us? The news. I mean, everybody watches the news because they want to know what's going on in the world. I say, if you want to disengage from what's going on in the world, then you watch the news. And by the way, of course, the news comes from a cube, a TV, and it's right in our faces. I mean, quite literally in the form of the TV. But when you look at the way the news conducts itself, which is all scripted, and everybody has seen that little collage of all the news people saying the same thing, and it overlaps like it is literally a script. You start to wonder, why do they do that? And then if you look back to MK Ultra, or even the Pavlov dog experiments, whenever they would torture dogs, they noticed that if you abuse something enough and long enough, its primordial programming will dissipate, and that's beaten out of them, you can reprogram them. And if it's after the abuse, that to teach an old dog new tricks, so to speak, is almost impossible.
That particularly the last thing you just said there, it's like you go through your programming in school and what have you, which it is. You go through, you know, your primary schools, secondary schools, colleges, university, and you get your little piece of paper and you say this.
Right.
But you know, that's the same thing with anything, isn't it? Like the new generation that's coming up, they leave it a little while. So it only takes 10 years really for somebody to pass through schools. Maybe a bit longer if they go through university, but it seems like the kids now with the new gender thing that they're bringing in, and all these other different kinds of what I call nefarious philosophies on how to live your life, and just conduct it as the state would like you to do it. You know, and although it's always been like that, these new things now, along with the technology that's brought along with it, I fear for them greatly, because you might have stood a little bit of it. When I grew up, no mobile phones, no computers, no cameras everywhere. And like, whether you know this or not, Joe, but in the UK, there's more cameras than any other country in Europe watching what you're doing. You know, just everywhere you go.
They're bringing it in. It's here.
You know, it really is Big Brother. You know, so I do fear for them. So the thing is that, see, for me, I started a spiritual journey when I was 22. I'm not going to waffle a little bit, but I got into Buddhism and things like this. I went through quite a lot of number of cults first, but I learned meditation, contemplation, and all these other things. And there's still, even to this day, 65 now, by the way, so I'm cracking on a bit. It's
Yeah.
it's still
Embrace it.
yeah. I've still got the suffering of unsatisfactoriness, as in, for instance, there's plenty of philosophical variants and influences that I've delved into, just like yourself, and that's been happening a lot over historical time. Do you look at everything still speculatively yourself personally,
Right.
or do
Right.
you lean anywhere like nihilism, eternalist, or do you prefer to say neutral?
Well, I'll answer that question in the words of Ferris Bueller. And we find these little hints in the most odd places. But when he's getting out of the shower and he's got his silly, hair and it's up in a towel or whatever, he says, he looks at the camera. He says, we shouldn't believe in isms. We should believe in ourselves.
Yeah.
And I saw that when I was 4 years old. And
Right.
it's the whole movie struck me in the first place. I knew there was more to it before I even knew that there was more to it. But to answer your question, I think a little bit more specifically, I want to go back to what you just said about Zen Buddhism. Unlike the West, knowledge in the East is actually akin to what you can forget. So we can't take on actual philosophical ideas that teach us about the self without first shedding all of the indoctrination that we've been carrying on our backs for our entire lives, because you can't just pack it all on top of it. So wisdom or knowledge, so to speak, to the Zen Buddhist is like carving a statue. You don't add shit to the rock. If you glue something to a rock, it's just going to fall apart easily. No, you chisel away at the rock and you take away the excess parts of it. In a way, if I had a philosophical idea that I do lean toward, it would be to shed all of them. And then once they're all completely gone, maybe dabble in this one over here and dabble in this one over here. And if you find one that is in tune with you, by all means go with it. Like, for example, one that has really been catching my attention lately is the ideals of the Rosicrucians, right? And which goes into the black cube and the cross, obviously, and the message of the Christ, and the Christ being within us, of course, which is not an external God like we've been taught, but an internal
not the
God.
literalist view.
Right. Right, exactly. So, but that's where I stop, because once I start studying what the Rosicrucians seem to understand, I get deep enough into it where I say, okay, this is all a neat belief system, but now it also leads into these practices and these rituals and these little secret sects and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That at that point I stop at that ism, so to speak, and I move on to the next one, because I'm not going to be a Rosicrucian, because I don't want to do all these rituals and these little ceremonies and stuff like that. That's not my style. So I'll kind of look into Zen Buddhism, where you should be able to just sit down and relax and let your body heal itself and let your mind shed its own programming, and that's all perfect. But then you continue going down that road of that particular ism, and before you know it, it leads to a place to where you're not going to be a persona anymore in the world. All of a sudden, I wouldn't be able to enjoy having a YouTube channel and getting all the attention that I will admittedly love.
Yeah. So basically, you've got this void and emptiness as the ultimate principles of the universe. But I find it really contrasting, and I can't really join it up myself. I'm dying to ask you this question, because I've had so many people and it seems to stump them. I don't know whether they've ever thought of it, but like, for instance, the difference between the void and the emptiness and, say, universal mind, a creator or God, as an all-encompassing intelligence, say, that governs the universe and all the principles in nature and what have you. It's not. How do we get that, if at all, together?
Yeah.
I mean, how do you sort of reconcile any of those ideas between Taoist and Buddhist concepts and the all in all, like in Hermeticism and things like this?
I think that's a perfect question, and You kind of answered it yourself, but if I might rephrase just a bit, is that the concept of emptiness in Buddhism is oftentimes illustrated by the empty cup, to where we empty our cup of all these ideals, but that doesn't mean nothingness, because the cup is still there. The cup just happens to be empty. And so it does exist, but it's the idea of, they say, like, if you know the essence of clay, then you know the essence of the cup, the form. And it's just like they say in the Taoists, they say, if you understand the concept of gold, now you understand all things that are gold, rings, necklaces, chalices, or whatever they are. So it's not that it's not there, it's that it is a derivative of a primordial first cause. And so the isms always seem to lead to a form of a god, a godhead of some sort.
Yeah.
But as human beings, as people with personalities, we have a very keen urge on personifying those figures to make them understandable to ourselves.
Yeah.
And so, like, for example, let's say, okay, well, if you look at the where is it at? I'm not going to pull it out, but there's the original Siddhartha was the one, when they asked him who God was, he said, it's not what the eyes can see, but it's that by which the eyes can see. Know that to be Brahma the Eternal. So just that sentence alone is pointing out the fact that if the God figure that we're trying to figure out, or in a way stick into a box so we can study, forget about it, because he is the box. In fact, he's not only the box, he's the place in which that box can be in the first place. So another way to answer that question is that I've got Christian friends who have, some of which angrily, but some of which only playfully have.
The rest of this coffee.
No, go ahead. I got a good cup right here. I'm good to go.
All right. It's rolled up. But actually, I will just pour it in here.
No problem, buddy. So they kind of railed me about being a not Christian, and and somebody asked me about it. They said, "Thank you, dude." They said, why do these people who believe in God why are they saying that you don't believe in God? And it's a really good question. And I thought about that for a moment. And I thought about, well, wait a second. I don't have to believe in God. I know, I took that from Carl, by the way, but I don't have to believe in God because I know. And in a way, some of these Christians or isms that we were talking about, in a way, they actually don't believe in God, because they believe in a man who's living up here with a clip.
Well, that's that literal nonsense, isn't it?
Right. So if you believe in this guy who's keeping track of your sins, and if you smile at a Buddha statue, he's putting a mark on the bad list, that's Santa Claus, you know? Yeah. So in a way, these particular sects of religious that personify God, in a way, actually don't believe in God. They don't believe in the fabric of existence in which things can exist. Ram Dass is the one who said God is, and then period. He doesn't say God is this. He doesn't say God is a fractal geometric pattern. He doesn't say God is a personification of the will. He doesn't say God is this or that. He just says God is. And that's exactly what Siddhartha was trying to say about, know that to be Brahma the Eternal, not that what the eyes can see, but that by which the eyes can see. It's formlessness and it's absolute emptiness. But that's because that emptiness exists, other things now can exist, So that's the perfect way to get back to what we said in the first place. The opposite of Saturn Wor-Ship is the idea that God is within. And even that I have trouble with, because to say God is within, somebody could misconstrue that and say that the one and only God is within me. Yeah. Instead of understanding that the God sense is that in which that you can exist, Right. So any branch that comes off from that trunk is only meant, you're not supposed to stay on that branch. You're supposed to work your way down that branch until you get down to the trunk and then eventually to the seed. And when you get to that seed, you realize there's actually nothing there. And that's the idea.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic, that, Joey. Brilliant. Yeah.
Thank you.
I think that's why that kind of syncretism is kind of key, isn't it? Like that's what we do. You pull the thread, and I think a lot of people there's a big thing with this I am stuff at the moment. But it's like, well, if you're saying that you're anything, then you're putting yourself in a box. A bit like how you said, Joey, like how a child and children in legalese means chattel, which means property, moving from room to room, being brainwashed and programmed in each cube, and it's a cube within a cube. Just like how they bury us in coffins as well. That's another confinement, like a contract or a construct. And again, when we kind of take like the overview of it and look at it like from this kind of point, is it even the news in legal terms, like you guys are touching with that kind of, again, it's another cube in it. It's staring into a scrying mirror. And the news in legal terms is classed as an advert. It's classed as a commercial. So that's how they get to lie as much as they like, because if you buy that product, well, you buy that product, and we have an unlimited right to contract at law. But so that kind of syncretism, which is, obviously, just looking at your bookshelf and basically, that's what I've done. I don't say I am anything. I don't say, I don't stay stuck in that box. I pull the proverbial thread, and I don't tell other people that what I say is correct either. We postulate and we put forward, and these are great conversations. But I think there is a proverbial thread, as I say. You can kind of follow that, and even scripture. Pete, like going back to Christians. Being a follower of Christ is something within. It's a consciousness. It's a state to attain, like an enlightenment within, from within, really. But because I think it's Galatians 4:24, and the clue's in the title, isn't it? Scripture, your script. It's a script. It's codified. It's meant to be read as a code. Now, if you're reading it literally, you've missed the point, because it even says, like saying Galatians 4:24, which things are an allegory. It's all told in parables and allegory, because if you read it literally, then you're not an adept. If you read in symbols and you read the code, then you're starting to decode, the nature, or, especially kind of, Adam means atom, Adam. Just as Eve, is she's the duality. She's PM, so Adam is AM, and it's all to do with time again. And Father Kronos, we know that the elites worship Saturn, but they worship the negative elements of Saturn. To actually be born into matter is kind of a positive thing. But going back to your book, Joey, and we know that it's to do with this purification of ourselves, unfortunately through suffering. And Saturn, that the epitome of him as an archetype, or the planet as an archetype. Saturn gives us suffering, which releases us from the finite. And I think, whether we reincarnate or not, but the greatest good ultimately, and that's what you picked up from your extensive study, is that that's the illumination. That is that ascension, or transcending into the highest state, or transcending is ending that trance of time for me. And the elites, as I say, worship. It's all ship in maritime cargo terms. They worship Saturn and time, because I have a theory, and I don't know what you think about this, that I think if we don't know who we are, and I think that's why the Vikings had Valhalla, or the Native American Indians, maybe had the Great Spirit or the Spirit Horse, because you've got to know who you are in this life, know thyself, and have kind of done the inner work to be able to kind of get out in a way. And the Saturnian, these overlords, or these elites, I think they worship time, because obviously they know all this occult hidden information. And what they're doing is, I think they actually transport, or have the technology potentially to transport their consciousness through time, so that they are perceived as gods of matter, which is why they want to keep, 666 means 6 neutrons, 6 electrons, 6 protons. It is the number of the beast, but it's the number of man. So I think they you see these pictures of celebrities from the 1800s that are now here. I think, like, pictures of Nicolas Cage and and I think that's what they're doing. And I think if we don't know who we are, we're going to keep coming back in. And I think that's why they want to keep us, now they want transhumanism, don't they, to keep us trapped in this idea that we are matter. And that's
that leads to, like, they say you can transcend the human form now with, like, artificial intelligence through VR and going into a new place and creating a new persona. And in a way, what better way to make you forget who you are? And just real quick, anybody who wants to understand the symbolism that she's talking about, but I know that, like, the Secret Teachings of All Ages is really dense or whatever, but look at this thin little pamphlet or whatever by Manly P. Hall, Initiates of the Flame. Anyone who might be new to this kind of stuff, who wants to understand how symbols transcend language, I recommend this little piece. It's only $4 too, and it's a great way to get your foot in the door, so to speak. And then two or three other things that you just said there that I would love to touch on is the prefix con and construct, and and I can't help but remember the old joke: what is the opposite of progress? It's Congress. And if you think about the word, Congress, these people who are making these laws, they've got the word con in their name already. It's already there, and the power of language is there, and we'll just accept that, and we'll, as if we have a choice to accept it. They make the laws. And oh shit, there was another thing that you said that just made me what was it?
Was it the transport their consciousness, matter 666?
The six, right. And because in the Bible it says the 666 is the nature of the beast, and that made us think the word devil. And no, what did the Bible call beasts? Animals, right? These creatures that they don't have free will, and they have sexual intercourse, and their body pulls them wherever the food is. Like in the Bhagavad Gita, the horses that do the chariots. What's up?
Today, could we go to that tea place that we got those?
We have tea here, buddy. We'll do tea here. Sorry, guys, one moment.
No, it's all right.
Yeah, we'll check that out. Right.
I like the kid. What are the kiddies' name? One's called Cleopatra. I know this. What was the other one called?
Cleopatra is great. And Dr. Pickles is our Zen master.
Dr. Pickles.
Dr. Pickles.
Hey, is that one Dr. Pickles? That was Dr. Pickles, isn't it?
Dr. Pickles is an expert in 21 Pilots lyrics, and that's what he's got his medical degree in. And so the 666 and calling it the nature of the beast is almost obvious that it means our animal nature, because the 6 carbon atoms, the 6 protons, 6 neutrons, 6 electrons, is what carbon is made out of. So if you think about it, consciousness is not made out of atoms. So to say nobody can buy, sell, or trade without the mark of the beast, the 666, literally, it's almost not a metaphor. It's almost literal in the Bible, because it really borderlines that gray area between parable and literal speaking in that particular part in the Bible, because a lot of the New Testament is literal. Most of the Old Testament is parabolic. But that's the beast doesn't mean the devil. The beast means the animal nature that we are quite literally made out of. It's just that nowadays we seem to have, coined the term black cube for that, which is a little bit more alluring, of course, a little bit more catchy, and it doesn't have a devil connotation to it. And it makes it illustrates it better as a symbol than numerology does. But it's to be embraced. It doesn't. So this is where people get confused. They want to get all spiritual and ignore the physical body and its needs. And that does come in handy. Fasting or abstinence from sexual activity or anything like that helps us start to shed the body, but trying to eliminate the ego altogether is going to become a train wreck for you in your life, because we have a persona, and that's what makes us individuals, and that individualness is what creates creativity in the first place. So it's not bad. It's not something that's evil, and it should be used as a tool. You know, a tool, it can be used in many ways. You can have a hammer. You can use the hammer to build a shed, or you can beat yourself in the face with it. And it's your choice what you want to do with that particular tool. So my human body here in the black cube, or as someone might call it, the 666, has nothing to do with anything to do with the devil. It means that I I have the privilege of being a unique personality inside of this skin, and then share myself with you guys. Whereas the spiritual schools nowadays that say completely get rid of the physical nature are missing the point. Because what do you want to do? You want to be a big soup, like with no individuality? That doesn't work here. You know, it might work somewhere in a higher dimension, but even there, that means you're going to be contributing the portions of your own personal library, so to speak, into the consciousness of other egregor forms, like in the halls of Amenti, or the Akashic records, or the various amount of names that they've been called. I think Nikola Tesla called it a whole different thing, but it's all mouth noises for the same thing. When we come out of this body, we take the things that we've learned, and then we add it to the great library of knowledge that is meant to be expounded. And to me, that's the whole point. My last video, that is the 9, the primordial question. People jumped into it expecting to learn about aliens, and the 9 is supposedly a race of alien beings, sure, but we keep segregating the idea. These are angels and these are aliens, right? So we're making these mouth noises for the same thing, when really the video itself is about feeding the top of that pyramid, which essentially is hopefully love, in a form of an Ouroboros. So we come down to the bottom of the pyramid, to the high density realms, to learn things about struggle, and then we loop back around, and we become the tail end of that Ouroboros, to be fed upon by God lovingly. And he learns, and that's what makes that thing expand. It can't be better said than Carl Jung wrote a book called Answer to Job, because everybody was losing their minds about the book of Job, completely losing the point, because it makes God out to look like a dick. And that is, if you take it literally. But if you understand that Job is the persona and God is the self within Job, and of course the devil who's making that bet with God being desire or limitation, so to speak, that kind of bet between the two, but Job decides to stay centered within it. And as he does, God himself, who is all-knowing, so to speak, and eternal, grows. And that's the real paradox, is the fact that something that is all-knowing and is already eternal can grow. It begs a lot of questions, like, what does it grow into? Well, that would be void in the first place, or real empty space there. But it goes to show you that nothing is outside of the ability to grow itself. And in our case, unfortunately, that growth has to be done through suffering. And it's an honor. It's an honor to do so. Please, go ahead.
Honestly, just so many things popped up there while you were talking. Just so many. I could have gone on all day myself. Like the story of Job for the kickoff. That is basically about having things ripped away from you and keeping steadfast, despite all the terrible things that happened to you. And I suppose at the end of the story, he gives him more children, even though he's lost loads of kids, and honestly, which sounds ridiculous to me. Anyway, that part of it, it's not like, in literal terms, if you lost any kids, you're never going to forget that, is it? But
of course,
it's about attachment, non-attachment, and keeping steadfast to the spirit, basically. Because all devil and Satan are titles. It's not a persona as such. It just simply means opposer and slanderer. That's all that means. So opposers and slanderers, or opposers putting things in front of you that you can trip you up spiritually. And all the other things before. I watched that video of yours and I loved it. The one about the 9.
Thank you.
And you never mentioned the law of one once.
I know,
innit?
I know.
And then, do you know
Well,
what? It was almost like you were narrating something from the Law of One, the raw material. And you didn't say it, and I was waiting for it to come out, and yet you
right.
drew on all these other things that you were drawing on, which blew my mind as well. So it's cool, and I hope you watched that one, Carly, because you'll love it if you haven't watched it
Oh
already.
yes, no, I have. I've watched it, yeah, and because I mentioned to Joey about the Law of One because we interviewed a few months back the scribe from the Law of One, Jim McCarthy.
Yeah,
It's
Ah,
channeled material, and
yeah, it was
yeah, Jim
brilliant.
McCarthy was the guy obviously who wrote it all down with a guy called Don Elkins who was the questioner, and Carla Ruckhart who was the channel herself, and that material is off the charts. But they talk about the Council of Nine, and interestingly, the Council of Nine reside according to the Law of One and Ra, which is a sixth density social memory complex, a positive social memory complex
right,
entities. Well, a complex is all the entities what like talking through a hive mind. Yeah, the law of one is obviously just talks about the one infinite creator and the oneness of everything. And yeah, it basically we're in this octave of existence, kind of like you two as musicians will know. And I always explain this badly, but we've got 1 to the 7, like the chakra system. Though I think perhaps there's more, but who knows? 1 to 7 according to law of one, and then the 8 becomes the first of the next octave, as in
right,
music.
And the
right,
Universe,
colours
as we
too,
know,
aren't they?
means yeah,
right,
one universe literally means one song, doesn't it? And it's all we know that everything's to do with frequency and vibration. Think Tesla 369 when we're going into numerology and such, but actually Tesla it's 36912 because 12 like the zodiac,
right,
12 zodiacs, 12 departs. Yeah, it's missed off with the Tesla thing because apparently it's a secret for the adept to work out the 12. But
right,
maybe we have, maybe we've not. But yeah, certainly I think with the law of one, it really resonated with me because obviously you've got the infinite creator, of which I've seen, which is this. I'm going to just share an interesting thing that happened to me again on plant medicines, but I'd kind of gone
can't
straight to
wait.
source. And I was in it. I was in this eternal fire, and I perceived it as a masculine energy, and it kind of spat me out. And then it just was like infinite love, and it was just, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. And I fell through
Right,
what I can only describe as timelessness. And as I fell through time, what's interesting was it was cubes, green and black cubes. And I fell through all these cubes. And then as I fell through the cubes, I got into heavier and heavier densities, still with this, as I perceived as a male entity, but maybe that's because I was female. Maybe it would be different for a guy. We all have different experiences, of course, and it's difficult to kind of express this experience. But and then it was just going, I love you, I love you, I love you. But it just got a little bit more faint as I went through. And as I fell back into duality,
right,
reality, and went and took a breath, I was
yeah,
like puking up these black and green cubes, right? But it was kind of like I wasn't being physically sick, but I was just puking love up, and I was like, oh, and I came back and I
right.
said, somebody hate me. And I had to wake my friend up to give me a bit of a spotlight. So I literally had to kind of, I was so confused, but in a weird way. And then what I started to investigate was that, you know the squaring of the circle, and obviously
Right,
in construction, this kind of theme, and that you can actually make spheres from cubes. And I started
right,
researching and studying all this stuff, and I think that's the kind of building block. I've gone right off the law of one now, really, but I suppose what I'm trying to say is I kind of understand how there's timelessness of, and that's why we call the dark matters, because we know things kind of come from that, from the long dark night of the soul. It comes from the creator rests in the dark, and then our
right,
logos being the central sun of this octave of this experience, and that we experience this third density according to the law of one, which is duality, reality, and come down here to make the choice, positive or negative, hot,
right,
cold, light, dark, male, female. And when we
right,
resolve those paradoxes and we go through these long dark nights of the soul and we remember who we are, then we have that ability to transcend and so on and so forth. So
right.
I don't know where I went off with that one really, but I suppose
No, good.
my
I'm glad
point
you did
was
because yeah, well, you brought up the dark night of the soul, and I can't emphasize enough to people the concept of the slingshot that happens with the dark night of the soul. Uh, a lot of people in my life have noticed how well I'm doing right now without having any idea that the 9 months, six especially where the darkest period of my adult life. So
yeah.
I made that Saturn video that what 500,000 views
Yeah,
now.
it's about half a
I
million.
made that Saturn video while suffering so deeply, more than I had ever suffered in my life. And in a way, that Saturn video was meant for me to distract myself from what I was going through. And that is the slingshot that I experienced. And people want to shy away from suffering by chasing comfort. And I can't stress enough that the more that you suffer within a healthy bounds, I mean, that is healthy suffering. I mean, like abstaining, because like drinking alcohol and doing drugs is suffering, but it's also remaining in that comfort zone so that slingshot's not being pulled back. It's abstinence from those from those pleasures that cause that slingshot to really reel back. And then one day when your body and mind says, okay, we've suffered enough, it lets go, and you get catapulted into towards the light at the end of the tunnel that you have no choice but to go through. You know, you can't go backwards, you can't go around it. It's the same mythology of the dragon at the front of the cave. You know, you can't get to that treasure by going around the cave, and you certainly can't tiptoe past the dragon. You know, you have to face the dragon. So to get to the light at the end of the tunnel, you have got to keep going through it. The movie Shawshank Redemption is a perfect example of that. He had to crawl through shit to come out to the other side, where it rained on him, and he was cleansed of and now not the nasty literal version of what we're talking about here, but if you take that analogy and apply it to the soul, we understand that suffering is literally exercise for the soul. You know, it's meant to be embraced, just like going to the gym.
I've made a distinction myself between this is only my take on it, because I've read a lot of stuff myself, and like a lot of people equate the soul with the spirit, and I've tried to separate the two, simply because what you were saying about ego, it isn't evil. That is your soul, basically.
Right.
If you make a distinction, let's say you've got your mind, body, spirit, and soul. It's not now I make a distinction, is it like that? That your body, that your soul is running through the veins in your blood. You are the living soul.
Right.
But and your mind is a witness to that.
Right.
So you've got your mind, body, and your soul, but the spirit is, we know making distinction before whether you want to see it as the all in all, which I do think it is, or that it's emptiness which runs through and permeates everything, that is both within and without everything, except anything that has conditions. So it's the unconditioned emptiness, and anything that has conditions is only within it, if you see what I mean. So basically, the difference between the spirit and the soul for me is that the spirit is the witness to all that you do. And once you have recognized, whether you want to see it as in terms of the creator experience self subjectively, or you're flowing with it, the spirit of life itself, literally, once you become accustomed to that, and that is what you want to develop, that's the only way to defeat an ego. And you don't need to defeat it, you need to look after it. So you look after the mind, body, and the spirit. The mind, body, and the soul through the spirit. The spirit is the life. The spirit is the life itself. And that is the way, the truth, and the life, as in the Christian sense, or it's the way in Taoism, and it's the ultimate goal, say, in Buddhism. This is how I look at it. It's not necessarily easy to explain, because there is no real explaining it. After all, those who comprehend it not, and those who understand it not. So the spirit is something to develop. So you grow it, you develop it. When the body and that mind that was in that place is gone. So this is make a distinction now between consciousness and mind, which is both the same thing to me. But when the body is gone, that's the soul. The soul is a living soul and it dies, but the spirit is eternal. It's unconditional. It doesn't need any conditions. So wherever that comes into play next would be in a soul, say. It's a new body, a new person, which has the mind to develop. But the spirit, as you just said, is where the Akashic records may rest with, or it is not a person, not personal to like that. It comes from either you want to say it comes from a creator, or it's part of the true source of the all in all, whatever. That's how I've made the distinctions to look at it, and I play my role that way, because everything that I've learned is not based on experience. I've stuffed my head full of knowledge, I've had some really cool experiences. And that was another one. Have you had any kind of like mystical experiences yourself, Joe? You know, where it's based upon an experience rather than just something that you've learned?
Yes, I think that I try to learn from life itself just on an everyday basis. I have had spiritual experiences, of course, with DMT and in high doses of psilocybin mushrooms and everything, but unfortunately, like many of the people who I've been talking to lately, I don't have any sort of psychic abilities or clairvoyance or anything like that. You know, I'm pretty regular in the sense of that, but in a way that keeps me grounded, so to speak. And but well, if I was to say if there's any sort of way for me to learn what you're speaking of through direct experience or gnosis, so to speak, and I grabbed this off the shelf because all right, so like we were talking about symbolism a moment ago, and everything that you just described between the body, the body, the soul, and the spirit, because that there is a distinction there to be made between the spirit and the soul, and that's so beautifully illustrated in the Bhagavad Gita with the chariot. So if I can get this close enough here, you'll see that there's a guy driving the chariot, right? But in the back, there's a witnesser to everything that's going on. So this guy's doing the work and he's driving, well, the animal. So that's the horses are your body, right? And they will chase an apple off a cliff and kill everybody if you lose track of the reins. But who's got to do the work to keep them in line is the soul. And he's the guy, you know, but back here, you've got the person doing no work. He's just witnessing the whole thing. That's the spirit. You know, and that's where symbolism is a beautiful way. Actually, and by the way, the chariot is the body. I'm sorry, the horses are desire.
Yeah, that's right. That's AC Bhaktivedanta, isn't it? That one. Swami Prabhupada wrote that one.
This is by His Divine Grace. Baka Daga Bagadagadu.
AC Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Yeah.
No, you got it. Yeah, Swami Pada Buddha Pada Begadaba.
Yeah.
So you'll have to. That's my forte. Is like I can understand the symbolism on the book cover and within the book.
You explained
I can't pronounce his name.
No need to read it if you understand that much.
What do you think, Joey? I mean, one of the guys I've been really kind of deep diving recently, as well as your good self, is a guy. I'm going to try and get him on next, hopefully, or at some point if he agrees to it. But he's he does all the decoders, the gematria guys, and the numerology and the astro alchemical decoders. He's a guy called Logan, and he has a show, a YouTube channel called Decode Your Reality. So if people are watching this and you've not checked him out, check him out. But and I suppose, you've amassed this wealth of knowledge from your work. And I suppose, I don't like, we are adepts in that sense. We're on that path, aren't we? Like you say, the long dark night of the soul. If you're not walking through Hades, and I think you did a video that I watched the other day. And, like you're saying about Christ, I think it's this archetype, like we said earlier, without repeating myself. But one of the theories is that, he descended to hell to come back to earth to teach the imprisoned in the kind of tesseract or cube of Saturn and time to, and then came back up to resurrect and ascend, which represents that lower to the higher mind. And for me, the cross and the cube, as we know the symbolism of it now, the image of the crucifixion, even though we're taught it literally, it's that ultimate image, isn't it, and representation of suffering and purification of our material kind of existence into that higher place. But I kind of have this theory, and like I say, you've done, I suppose if I was going to put existence in a meme, which you just cannot do, but just for a crack, just for the laugh, I suppose I think in a way that we are in this scripted reality. I think that's how the decoders can decode. And it's interesting with the law of one, from the first distortion from the infinite creator, giving his sublogos, free will to kind of do as they will. Because it'd be a boring experience for the infinite creator experiencing it subjectively through our individuated consciousness if he didn't give us free will. Else what kind of, he knows what's going to happen. And there's a really cool line in the law of one that says, imagine, if you will, an infinite game of poker. Yeah, if we knew the cards of the other players, it'd be a fucking boring game, wouldn't it? So as frustrating as it is, we don't know.
Right.
But I think the decoders with with astrology, which is the true theology, as Santos Bonacci would say, he's a syncretist. I think that's how they can kind of almost like, I don't want to simplify it to this, but I'm gonna. So like we're in a
You got
computer
to.
game, and
Yeah.
these are our avatars, yeah. And so we've got all these free will choices, but within a kind of construct, within a box, really, within a box, within a box. And Logan from Decode Your Reality will say, when you become that kind of non-player character, when you're kind of like, you're seeing the cube, the cube, the cube, the cube, and removing yourself from it, that's when there was that film with Ryan Reynolds, what is it called? Some
Free
guy,
Guy.
and he becomes
Deadpool.
that's a really good film. What was it
Free Guy.
called?
Beautiful movie.
Yeah, that's a brilliant,
It's
that's a brilliant way
my
to kind of
son's
look at it.
favorite
And
movie.
he's sick of being a non-player character, and then you are starting, and I don't want to use the word control, but I think you are then being able to kind of make better and wider, and the wider your choices get, you almost transcend the game, really. That's kind of the point. But so what do you think to that? I mean, that's how I look at it. I think we have free will choice, but it's always a paradox that needs to be resolved.
Right.
So it's like free will choice, but in this kind of scripted reality. And I think that's how the decoders can decode in the way that they do, but that we still also have interest in the game, if that makes sense.
Right. Well, first of all, does the guy you're mentioning, does he have a YouTube channel or any books out?
Yes, he's
Or
got a
both?
YouTube channel, yeah, called Decode Your Reality, his show is
Decode Your
called, and he's got a
Reality.
website as well called Cosmic Sugar. He literally did a decode on, and he's done many decodes, but one decode was on the guy who shot or assassinated Martin Luther King. So it's this
Yeah.
idea that we all come down, like William Shakespeare said, we are all actors. The world is a stage, and we are, mere actors on it.
Right.
That we all come down to play our part, yeah. And the guy who shot Martin Luther King and or
Oh, the
assassinated
CIA,
him
yeah.
was always going to shoot Martin Luther King, even to
Well,
these decodes, many things. But
right. No, so the way I kind of look at the idea of free will is that it is a paradox, of course, just like time travel or anything, it's a paradox. But just like the Chinese koans of the ancient Zen masters, it always seems that the more intellectually we look at the paradox, the more complex the paradox becomes. Whereas if we completely shed our skin of all logic, the paradox seems to solve itself accidentally. So I think the best way to illustrate the thing of free will is that, okay, if there was a big bang, everything's going to land the way it's going to land. This is, by the way, assuming the idea of the Big Bang, which I completely disagree with in the first place. But just for an analogy here, you know what? Fuck that. Let's go with the pool table. So depending on how you hit that white ball, the cue ball is going to hit the other balls, and they're all going to scatter in different directions because the 8-ball is not going to wake up and decide to turn left. So people use that argument and say, well, how can we possibly have free will whenever the way that bang happened or that cue ball was hit depends on which way we're going to scatter, And this is a great argument for determinism until you realize the fact that you're not the fucking pool balls. You're the guy holding the cue. And you always have been the guy holding the cue. And it doesn't, not your flesh, not your body, or not your job, not your title. That's the cue balls, yes. But the self, that thing that is so empty that it's almost impossible to find without this paradox, is when we realize that we are the ones holding the stick in the first place and always have been. That's never been different. And as soon as you shift your view, your paradigm to being the one holding the cue stick, is when you give yourself the power, God willing, to be without a sense of ego or a sense of power. You realize how powerful you actually are to hit that cue ball in a different direction, depending on what you find to be best for yourself and your loved ones, and hopefully the entire world around you. Don't throw cats, buddy. Did they land on their feet?
Leave Castro. They flying across the screen.
my son just went out of his way to make a whole bunch of these little teacups. We got a whole apothecary here in the back where we make all these little
I was gonna say
uh,
that looks very
Cool.
zen. Yeah,
right.
no,
So
I think you're bang on, and it's the same in the legal system, and when we realise that we're not debtors and we're actually creditors, when we realise that we've been gifting all our sweat equity and our share of the earth's resources over to these parasites, like who've been doing this for thousands of times, like it's like in the game of Monopoly, we're all busy pushing around the shoe when actually we're
right,
the banker. Actually, we're the creditor.
yeah,
Actually, we create. Dead entities can't create. And actually, we are beneficiaries of all these trusts because all the system is trust. And it's the same thing you were saying with the game of pool.
right,
We're creating that thing, and we've been enslaving ourselves by our own free will. And when we
right,
understand that, how much power we actually have inherently, it's just a case of
right,
like we move trust titles to rearrange all this bullshit in the banking system, or we do it dark matters type of thing. But it's rearranging that in our minds, isn't it? It's that mindset, and we're projecting this. I always say people
right,
always go about, go bang on about the matrix like it's something outside of ourselves. And I believe I'm like, no, we're projecting it, we're creating it both
right,
individually and collectively, which is why it's so important to go through, walk through Hades, as I say, do the long dark nights of the soul, because all this darkness that's coming to the surface now, that we're having to look at has been something that it has to happen. It ain't pretty, but here we are.
right. It has to happen. Just like well, growth doesn't happen without pain.
Yeah, yeah.
It's impossible. If everything was a paradise, there'd be no reason to explore. There'd be no reason to get up. There'd be no reason to search the self or anything. So the idea of paradise itself is actually, in a way, quite boring. Just like the analogy you made
Yeah.
earlier about a game, it's got challenges and
I think
stuff,
that.
and
Well,
that's
in the
that's
law
the
of one,
purpose.
we were in an Edenic state. The veil came down to separate our conscious and our subconscious minds. So basically, Lucifer, or the Luciferic consciousness, came to make a deal with our logos, and basically we chose it, and we said,
Right,
oh, because everyone was experiencing themselves in an Edenic state, and we knew ourselves as the creator because there was no veil. And
right.
veil is evil, switch round. So the evil, the veil came, and really,
Yeah,
the kind of the dark have outstayed their welcome. So really, but it was a bit boring, not boring, but there wasn't. Basically, they said, like, we've introduced this thing called polarity, which is this thing called the veil of forgetting, and it's really creating and generating energy for the one infinite creator knowing itself subjectively through your individuated consciousness, yada yada yada. So we went, yeah, all right, we'll have it. The veil came down. Apparently our logos, our sun god went, you motherfuckers, flooded the fuck
right,
out of us, because it all went west with the Watchers and the Anunnaki, and it isn't massively my arena. I'm very interested in it, but and then the beat's gone on, and we've forgotten who we are, and we've fallen further and further and further away from our true source, and that's why
right.
these resets come, allegedly.
Yeah. Well, that pendulum's going to swing back in the other direction, and I've got
Yeah.
proof of it right here. And obviously these conversations were taking place in the '60s and the early '70s, but a lot of laws changed real quick in the '70s
Yeah.
to make that state of mind impossible, or I should say illegal, to
Yeah.
actually embrace. And the hippies, despite really being onto something, didn't have the legal terminology and wherewithal to understand what the laws were doing so quickly in order to eliminate them. And that's why we need people like yourself to be able to educate the people who need that part of the learning process to be able to combat peacefully what they are inevitably trying to do to our souls by playing God in a way. And that's what the Black Cube mythology essentially is
Yeah.
these people who create the control systems are playing God in every sense of the
Yeah.
word, and creating an external God for us to worship in the first place. And to be honest with you, I use the word worship very, very loosely, because worship nowadays seems to have this idea of bowing down to something, when really it should be more of a conversation with something higher than yourself, not a bowing down to it. Of course, bowing down to it is a good way to put it because it's a form of respect, you know, but it's not a form of enslavement, you know.
Exactly. They invert it, don't they? Again, and that's absolutely bang on. That's a complete brilliant example of how they literally just invert stuff. Because I think I
Right.
watched a video with Billy Carson, you know, on forbidden knowledge, and they've actually pinpointed the worship gene where we've been genetically modified or genetically
Yes.
riddled with.
When did that happen? I
They've
want to know
actually,
when that.
yeah, we would have lived like till about 900 years old, like Aragorn in Lord of the Rings would have been like the Dunedain, you know. But hang on a minute, Tower of Babel, they start, you know, and they're starting to get a little bit too smart. These lot, hang on, or wherever, you know, that's what
Right.
you know. Our study of where we've come from and our genetics in Scripture. That's what Genesis is, you know.
Right.
And in the beginning, and is DNA, and in the beginning was the Word. For first it
Right.
was thought, and then it was speak and spell, and then that created kind of matter, I suppose. But yeah, they found this
Right.
worship gene. So we've literally been programmed to worship something outside of ourselves. And yeah, they apparently we would have lived a lot longer. And those things were called, I think, the telomere caps, and those were shut off so that we'd lived
Right.
less. And they've, you know, poisoned them, keep them sick, keep them stupid, sit down, shut up, you know. And the beat's
Right.
gone on them
Right.
since
Yeah, that's
then. But
another
yeah,
story. It's like the Anunnaki, isn't it? They were
Right.
supposed to
yeah,
mess with us. There's a number of stories like that. And then what you were saying
Right.
before, Joey, about the 60s and what, they shut that down really quick
Right.
because, you know, it's just, you're talking about love and freedom and all the rest of it. And up to the present day, what we were just talking at the beginning of this podcast about the programming of children and what have you,
Right.
if they could knock that on the head in the 60s as quickly as they did, I mean, it did carry on through the 70s somewhat. I know because I lived through it. It was
Right.
lucky, you know. But this is why I'm saying I fear about the programming now. It's heading towards, like Carl just said, this transhumanism prison. It's
Right.
it's not just about you're not going to have any freedom, you're not going to have any privacy, and
Right.
privacy is really important. I mean,
Right.
you don't have somebody leaning over your bed watching what you're doing while you're having sex with your wife or what have you. And
Right.
and that's
unless you
necessarily
want
something
to.
like a Jehovah's Witness would do. You know,
Not my thing, but
they tell you how to behave sexually in some cults like that, and it says, "Oh,
Right.
they've placed God in front of you with a stick, going not that."
Right.
But then when you
Right.
know it's just a matter of taste, really, and it's private. You don't. If you don't like flipping onions or you don't like carrots, it don't mean to say you you know, that's bad. The variety's there for a good reason, isn't it? So you can pick and choose to whatever you
Right.
desire to like. Same with music. I mean, I'm
Right.
very eclectic in music. I love loads of different genres of it, and that makes it richer for me. And for
Yes.
some people, that's the same in sexual activity, I suppose, isn't it?
Right.
Do you know what I
Right.
mean? If you see what I'm getting at, but
Of
that
course.
is all going to be taken from you. And apart from, I believe personally that you could behave in a really immoral way sexually in the future because they don't mind that. So long as
Right.
you
that's what
don't
they're going for.
descend or move away from their narrative and the
Right.
credit system and all the things that they want to bring into
Well,
it, which is a
it's like
digital prison.
Aldous Huxley said in Brave New World that
Yeah,
sexual deviancy
yeah,
was made out to be a virtue, so to
yeah,
speak. And it's, you can have all the crazy sex you want, and in the book, you know, even with kids and whatnot. And it's these things where they, instead of like 1984, where they control people
yeah. The opposite. Yeah,
with punishment, they control you with pleasure, and
yeah.
then that's a scary thing to run down. And now the example comes up about the importance of privacy, and of course that does ring a bell to sexual activity, and that is kind of the first thing that comes to my mind as well. But another reason that I feel that privacy is so very important is because of meditative states. Whenever
Absolutely,
you Right. When you go into a meditative state, you're able to study your own potential through. Okay, so
absolutely.
we're familiar with the double slit experiment, right?
Yeah,
Where yeah, so particles don't actually exist unless there's a conscious entity there to
collapse at the wave function.
It's a wave function, right?
Yeah.
So what happens to our meditative state now? Because, you know, remember the double slit experiment, they put a little camera in the box, and all of a sudden, because there was a consciousness there to measure it, it
That's
turned
right.
into particles, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what's going to happen to our private spiritual practices and meditations and breathing exercises whenever a lack of privacy is there to actually to collapse that wave function into a particle? All of a
That's
sudden,
it.
you're not able to connect with the divine, you know?
It's a total control of the mind, body, soul, and spirit to me. That's what they're aiming
Right.
for. And
And the inhibition of it.
yeah, and it's all a
Yeah,
lie,
yeah.
and it's all deceit. It's fraudulent,
Right.
all of it, as it always
And
been.
and it's always been that deception. It's the greatest deception. That's what the devil is. He's the greatest trickster. And I think
Yeah,
that's why
Mhm.
it's so
it's a
important to
lies.
be doing the inner work and cleansing your vessel and getting
Right.
into those high states. We're all human, we're all
Right.
flawed, we all kind of fuck up and whatnot. But I think when that awareness is there and that intent is there, because we ain't doing that. And they're not fucking kids on my watch, that's for sure, over here. So, they're trying, they're coming in they're doing this grooming of the children, bringing dildos in school. It's just like it's I mean, over here I'm sure as it's kind of getting over there, it's like what you said, Joey, they're ramping it up. There's nothing hidden anymore. It was always in
Right.
plain sight, really, with that
Right.
famous phrase, hidden in plain sight. It was never hidden for those that have eyes to see, as it says in scripture. And that's that,
Right.
we can all see it now, whether everybody does. And that's, I believe that the reset isn't just a financial reset. I think, and it
Oh,
links in with the law of one stuff, that there's a harvest of souls that happens. And basically, the resetting this place as well, the resetting consciousness. And if you're not getting it, like we were talking about Valhalla and, preparing for a good death in a way, I think that's what the cleansing of the vessel is, of the higher mind. To ascend, you need to be ready for that reset. And if you're not, you'll more than likely repeat it. I mean, who the fuck knows, as you'd say, Joe? we don't know. But I
right.
think the reset isn't just financial. I think it's spiritual. And I think that's like what you've touched on in a lot of your videos as well, Joey, with like Tartaria and the mud floods and the Egyptian pyramids. There's no record of the Egyptians ever building them, is there? And they
Right.
recorded pretty much everything. And I got that from
Right.
one of your videos. So
Thank you.
but again, it's almost like these buildings have been found, and we've kind of,
Right.
like you were saying about cathedrals, like knocking them down and building shit with cubes. These would have
Right.
been healing centers, resonance
Right.
chambers, frequency
Oh,
chambers. I don't think we can build them. Like I don't think that we did. And again, we're all starting to uncover this, the true history, or certainly pull again that proverbial thread of it and get back
Right.
to who we actually are, isn't it? It don't
And
make sense otherwise.
knocking down those buildings is a perfect way to make us forget who we are, and to replace it with a cube is more than just a slap in the face. And
yeah.
I don't know if you guys remember this, but shortly after 9/11, one of our counterattacks was to hire ISIS in conjunction with Al Qaeda to go to the Smithsonian museums and destroy all of the artifacts of ancient Sumeria, not
Yeah.
steal them, to destroy them. And I remember seeing a U.S. soldier and speaking with him privately, and how whenever they got their work done, they would come through and then they would clear the way for the resource brigade, so to speak, and they would look out in the streets, and he saw a fraction of the face of Gilgamesh laying in the streets on the ground, shattered. And what's interesting is that some of the and it wasn't the Smithsonian Museum like we have here in America, where we hide things like giant skeletons and whatnot. It was they had these large, expensive fakes of these Sumerian artifacts, right, or molds of them, so to speak, right. And ISIS, under the U.S. Military's monetary, they were funded by us. I don't say us, but they ran past the expensive fakes right to the basement, and they destroyed the Sumerian artifacts. And in this case, it's the same thing as knocking down a cathedral that used to be a hospice, and putting up a parking garage made out of cement. It makes us forget our origins, and our origins is quite literally who we are. All we are is mythology. We are quite literally walking, talking mythology, or I should say, the process of mythology in motion. And by destroying that, you can make us forget who we are so very quickly. And this is why I find it so important to, whenever, if you have a child like my son, ever since he was able to even comprehend English, and somewhat before that, I would read from him children's books, but not the shit that you get at the Scholastic Book Fair. I would read to him Aesop's fables and certain things like that were not necessarily deep mythology, but they all had a moralistic aspect to it.
The moral to the tale. Yeah,
right. It's in our blood. You know, the goose and the golden egg is a perfect thing to understand when you are going from a child to an adult. And if you can make us forget that, you can make us forget anything. And in fact, what better way of brainwashing people is that? People think that brainwashing is like a thing where they hypnotize you and they put, you know, things on the screen that make you zone out, and then they try to replant. It's not only more complex than that, but it's easier than that. All you have to do is destroy the source, and
they've
then you
done
uproot
that.
the tree.
So many times that's happened. Those things you're talking about in Iraq, it's usually the clay cuneiform tablets with all the information on it. It's the narrative that was 6,000 years old, and it's the oldest known writing we've got, apparently.
Right.
And not only that, if you just take like the Portuguese and the Spanish empires, how they went down to the South Americas, and they were told to wipe out the priests, get rid of the sacred books, and then it was the British and the French up in the North Americas doing the same. It's just rub everyone out, get rid of it, and do not let them have their spiritual beliefs or their spiritual practices. It was all turn it Christian, but from the Vatican, basically. Mainly.
We tell them that it's evil, and they go and destroy it because an authority figure, a guy in a lab coat or with a badge or a certain or he's got all the badges, military honors and stuff like that, which of course should be respected because of, you know, bravery sense and stuff like that. There are particular times that the military has made motions in order to maintain what we have here in America, and I'm not disagreeing with that whatsoever. But for the most part, even back all the way to King Henry and his son King John, who was related to every U.S. president that we have ever had, it goes to show you that all you have to do is destroy the source. And if you want to destroy the source, the best way to do that is say that they are threatened by our freedom, or that they are attacking us because of our God or whatever. Just any which way that you can figure out to tell a young person. And there's no coincidence that you get brought into the military when you're on your 18th birthday. Before I was legally retarded up until the age of 25. And I don't mean that like literally, and I don't mean to be derogatory, but I was in no position to make decisions for myself below the age of 25. And you can't drink until you're 21. So to say, to collect a child who is 18 and say these people are evil and we need to destroy their origins to destroy them is taking someone who has a lot of potential and creativity and using their naivety to use it against the rest of us and them. And in fact, you're hurting everybody on both sides, you know.
Like, it's soldiers, isn't it? Soul dyers. That's what they are. You know, you take young men like that. Soul dyers, and they send them into war, and we all know who controls war. It's the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers, it's the bankers. You know, all wars are rich men's wars and poor men fighting, you know, their wars for them. And it's this beast with the seven heads. You know, I think you just touched on it then, Johnny. It was Portugal, France, Spain, Germany, Holland, Belgium. This was Babylon. These were the extensions of Babylon, and that's what the United Nations is now. You know, under the IMF, International Monetary Fund, you know, it's banking, and it's all banking, and all roads lead to Rome. and the Vatican and Washington DC and the City of London are all in a trust with each other, and all our wealth is funneled. We I won't get into it because it's a long dive, but all our assets, it's just asset stripping, and it's unfathomable. The amounts are literally unfathomable. But again, like I think you both touched on it. They know if they control consciousness, if they control the narrative, if they give us the narratives, it's like a dream within a dream, like Edgar Allan Poe said. We're creating it for them because we're so busy staring at that instead of saying no to it. And we can do that in many ways, legally, lawfully, as well as spiritually. But and then creating, because creation is closest to the creator. And if we turn and create, like you say, for your son, for your son, for all our sons and daughters, something the way that things should have been. Maybe it's a timeline hop, maybe I'll be over there in that, but it's so important for them to hijack the narrative because everything's always been told in tales and parables and allegories, and that's what the script is within a scripted reality, and we can hijack that back. And that's kind of what I'm kind of very passionate about.
That's the most important thing to remember, is that nothing is unretrievable, because they can destroy every temple and every artifact, and they can destroy all of the things that are made of stone all around us, but they can't destroy our DNA. Well, the real deal.
They're trying.
right.
With the mRNA jibber jabs, but that's what they want. They want, again, it's interesting in law with the jab because it messes with you, it alters the DNA. It's an mRNA gene therapy, but they tried to patent a human. It's a very important US Supreme Court case, and they tried to patent a human. This corporation, they said a human, and actually in legalese, human means monster, but let's not go that. Let's say it's a hue of man, a hue of light. They invert it again, but yeah, basically the judge said no. So what did they do? They went away and thought, well, the judge actually states in the case, you can't patent a human. However, if you change their DNA or their genome significantly, then you can own them, and we're property via the birth certificate. But now they're going for it where you've literally queued up of your own free will, and now you are corporate property because obviously you're now patented. But that's their system. We don't want to do too much fear porn, but yeah, it was an interesting
diabolical behaviour that is going on. It's diabolical.
So I would like to, if I may, I would like to ask you a question, because every time you say something like soldiers, soul dyers, you're blowing my mind with these connections. Are these things that you just see naturally and then you put it together, or is there? Like, how do you come up with that? Because I would have never made that connection.
Yeah, I think it goes back to I kind of have like a brain for it, like I kind of make those kind of dots, but it's etymology really, and the study of language and its roots. So like we were saying, English language is a construct really. It's phonetically the direct opposite of Hebrew, and Hebrew has a numerical code to it, and the numbers, this mathematical interface of language, then goes to something what we call quantum grammar, and we can decode the whole of the language that and as we know, in the beginning was the word that creates this reality and this illusion. But yeah, certainly there's a word, they call it word magic, but atom, etymology. So again, when we understand etymology, we're understanding the atom and the beginnings of creation, because again in scripture it's spoken. And when you understand legalese and Black's law, which is black spelling, black magic, and like you said, Joey, good morning, it's the language of the dead. You get a job, and job in Hebrew means persecution. So you get a job to go and earn money. Earn is something you put dead people in to, and it just goes on, because really what we are is we're all classed as these dead fictional entities in the land of the dead. So it's a bit like when Morpheus says to Neo when they're in the training simulation, you think that's her you're breathing? And the classes as being the walking dead, and yeah, it's a huge study, but it's just a case of piecing it together. But it's endless really. It's like how you go and you'll wear the collar and the cuffs to go to work. Then that's classed as it's a symbol of slavery, isn't it? And hello, hell. Well, hello. When you should say hiya, and you know, I've done some really good presentations. In fact, so there's a guy who interviewed me that's coming out on I think it's Sunday, where I kind of decode the whole thing. But yeah, I'd love to kind of deep dive that with you. We could bounce that one off for hours and
Charlie,
hours. I mean, I could talk to you for hours and hours. We've done nearly a couple now, haven't we? So
I'd like to make a suggestion, actually,
Yeah.
yeah, shut
to
up.
Joey there,
I say
because
shut up.
Charlie does another podcast as well called Inverted Realities. And you could possibly get together on that as well, couldn't you? Or do a part
Yeah,
two of this. But I really think you should stay in touch and
yeah,
talk
we
about
will.
that
Oh, yeah.
stuff together there. Because you were right at the beginning of what you were saying, Joe. Those two things, when they blended, it's a more full comprehension of the environment and the paradigm that we're in at the moment. You know what I
Right.
mean? With the law and the esoteric stuff.
It's the
Right.
serpent
Really.
tongue, innit? So, you know, once
Yeah.
we understand their babble and their Babylon, and we kind of
And
go,
she blows
you know,
my
learn
mind
this.
all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, she constantly does it. It's
Unless I'm
all
walking
the
into
time.
a
It's great.
door or doing
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
Well,
But no, no,
especially
no.
being a guy like me who can't walk down the sidewalk without getting a video idea, and then speaking to you is both torture and such a pleasure at the same time, because like I'm like, fuck, there's an entire perfect 20-minute video of breaking down, because you could introduce it in such a way whereas like the intro would be like, okay, when we were all kids we were told, oh, no wonder the English language is so hard to understand, because we have all these words that are said the same way, earn and earn, but with a different spelling, or they, there,
Yeah.
and to and it's we say them all the same way, but they're spelled just a little bit differently, and then we act like it was an accident, like it happened. But no, you're making me realize that indeed these phonetic ways of saying these words are separated only by spelling on purpose, so that we end up, I should say, accidentally speaking into existence the programs that they've set out
That's right.
for us.
It's a spell.
Yeah,
Spelling
boom,
itself
boom.
is a
That's
spell.
you know,
Right.
that the way you put it then at the end is exactly it. You know, even like if I could just do one example, they say that we are birthed through our mother's canal, and birth canal. But birth is a shipping term. It's a birth. So you are delivered by the
Yeah.
doctor, and it's the dock of the ship, just as you get a dock in a
Yeah.
courtroom, which is a ship in itself. In maritime and admiralty, then you'll get the bank, which is the bank of the river. And actually, the judge is a banker, see postmaster. They're a corporate entity,
Right.
person, see corporation, because the dead can only speak to the dead. And then you've got, take husband. Husband, actually, in legal terms, means house slave. Family means a house of slaves. Wife actually comes from Fraulein, which is bitch, going into like old German and stuff like that. So literally everything that we're saying to one another is this dark bloody spell on each of his consciousnesses, yeah, and it's endless. But there's a
we don't
couple
have
of
a choice.
cool guys who do this, but I'll send you some. We'll have a chat off, later. Anyway, I'm sure I could chat to you for hours.
Well,
And it's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah. Well, my idea, real quick, if you would, if I don't want to take up too much of your time, but send me a list of the most commonly used words, and then I would like to write a script for a video, but then actually have you on my show, like so basically I'm going to write a script, and then the parts that I have trouble with, which is going to be quite a bit of it, send you those questions, have you record yourself speaking on those subjects, and then actually poke them in to the video as I go, because I've been meaning to be less isolated with my YouTube channel, because like with my book, I've got two other authors who wrote one. Jason Barron, who's a dear friend of mine, a Mason, wrote the introduction, and then Ivan Savage, who is a Hebrew linguist, wrote the chapter 21, the sinuous law of undulation. And so I've got multiple people in the book, but I don't have multiple people to collaborate with on the YouTube channel. I do interviews and stuff on the YouTube channel, but as far as the actual videos themselves go, it's pretty much me on my own. And I want to expound upon that as much as possible to make sure I'm not living on an island. And this would be fucking beautiful video, because what we're talking about with spelling and the way words are put together not only is a perfect subject on its own, but it ties together to several other pieces of esoteric information that can be brought in. Like whenever we talk about the ship and the river bank and all these things, you can easily do a really quick side note on the symbology of what that actually represents. The bank and the river, the mouth of the river, represent on a deeper level, and then bring it right back into the language thing, which we should stop there, because we're just going to give away spoilers of the whole
Well, yeah,
next
no,
video.
and honestly, just like any kind of syncretism, you know, it's endless, and the topics, like I say, pulling that thread together. Oh yeah, I'd love that. That'd be amazing. It's my passion. It's my big thing. And if I can help also like use that, you know, knowledge to help people get out of debts and all kinds of other stuff as well, then you know, yeah, no, I'd love to do that. That'd be awesome. Because you know, that's how I found you. I can't big you up enough. I know I put your book up in Dark Matters, and a few people said they were going to buy it as well. So hopefully, maybe we'll all have to just kind of blow up Barnes and Noble. But other than that, and we'll have to, if you ever come to England, we'll have to. We've got some good contacts in this. You know, when I've been in this movement for the last wait 20 odd years, but we'll have to throw you like a book launch or have a party for you. If you ever get over to this side of the pond, we could do that. That would be ace, wouldn't it? So,
Well,
but yeah, no, I'm definitely up for that. That sounds amazing. Put my name down.
Book of Wonderful Suffering. It got pulled from the shelves at Barnes and Noble, unfortunately, but it's still available on Amazon.
Yeah, that's where I got mine. So
okay,
yeah,
good.
if you've not got it, go get it.
I'll
It's
get a copy
amazing.
of that.
Amazon
definitely.
seems to be like the Wild West. You can put anything on Amazon, and that I find that to be beautiful. Whereas with Barnes and Noble, if they see one thing that's a little bit crossing that line, they pull it off the shelf. And I didn't get hurt by that, but maybe a little bit in my heart. But the people who published the damn thing pulled it from their shelves, and in a way, you know what? It's an honor.
Yes, thank you again so much, Joey. Honestly, it's an absolute honor because, like I say, I randomly stumbled across your channel and I was like, who the fuck is this guy? And I was just so giddy. And I was like, we got to get him on. We got to get him on. And then I emailed you and you emailed me back. I was like, whoa. So, absolute honor. Weren't it, Johnny? Yeah, thank you so much.
It's been utterly inspiring to talk to you guys. Thank you so much.